episode of Voices in the Community. My name is Dr. Jim Bostic, and we discuss issues that impact our community. This evening, we are honored to have as one of our special guests a giant in Westchester County, if not the state of New York, a young man who has made an indelible mark or left an indelible mark, certainly in the city of White Plains and throughout the state of New York as it relates to youth development, the empowerment of men all over our county and throughout our state. Frank Williams, who is the Executive Director of White Plains Youth Bureau. Good evening.
Hey Jim, how are you? Glad to be here with you.
Well, we're glad to have you here. Certainly it's been a long time since you and I have gotten together.
Yeah.
I think the last time I was a guest on your show.
Yeah.
And so, we've been looking forward to doing this for quite a while. And, we thought that this evening we would look into something that I know is very dear to your heart, and that is our youth, and particularly our men,
Right.
and our males. It seems that our young African American and Hispanic males are having such a difficult time acclimating themselves into society. They're not faring well in our public schools. The juvenile justice system seems to be overpopulated and certainly unbalanced as it relates to African American and Hispanic males. You've been in this business for a lot of years.
Right.
Where have we gone wrong, Frank?
Well, Jim, I believe that there are two areas that we need to analyze and look at. One is I think we have to look at the family, because I believe in the family, and that many of the issues that we see and face in our community springs forth from the family. And then also the church. I think that we have fallen away from the church. So when you look at the church and the family, in terms of our level of involvement, participation, I think we have some challenges. And everything comes out of the family and in the church. So when we become disconnected from church and family, we suffer, we hurt, and we fall down. And when we fall down, Jim, as you know, sometimes we don't get back up. So those are significant issues that we face. One is keeping our families strong and connected. And then we need to have a sense of who we are in terms of our own spirituality. And so many of our young people are not connected, attuned to church, to a house of worship. And so those are issues, two very things that are very concerning for me. How do we reestablish our sense of family and our worship?
And you're right, Frank. And one of the more alarming things is that we see in a lot of our communities, I know here in Yonkers, in this quadrant of the city of Yonkers, 75% of the families are single-parent households, which means that for the most part there is no male in the family, and so that these young males are growing up in an environment without male influence. And so they are learning what they believe is manhood from the things that they see in the street, from the brother on the street corner selling drugs, or the gangbanger. To them, that becomes being a man, and so they begin to emulate that because they don't have the influence of a male in the household. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the issues that you see in Yonkers with respect to our families, our community, the discord, the disenfranchisement, it's all over our country. It's not just here in Yonkers. It's in Chicago and Detroit and New Orleans and St. Louis. It's in Jackson, Mississippi. So the issue is, in terms of the black community, we have to do for ourselves. As I said earlier when we were talking privately, we keep waiting for somebody else to come and save us. We keep encouraging our young people to participate in basketball and football. And yes, those things have some ability to change our lives. But at the same time, I am a firm believer in our young person, our families, being educated. Because if you are educated, you'll do for yourself. You can compete. Our young people are so caught up in this sports syndrome to our hurt. We'd rather play football and basketball and not go to school, or we play that for a season, and after the football or basketball season is over, we stop going to school. And so I just believe that we need to take some steps back and look at, one, where we came from, the mistakes that we made along the way, and how we got to where we are, and then just rechange our focus. Our families are being attacked from stimuli, from the culture, from the music culture, from the environmental culture that we're facing. And so we have to look at this from the point of view of what can we do to change the course, but also we need to look at health and safety, because you're absolutely right. I go to, we have a prison reentry program in White Plains, and I go into the prison monthly. And you know who I see in prison? I see young black and Hispanic men. And I often ask them, well, what happened? Well, oftentimes the conversation is that I got caught up in stuff, right? I didn't go to school. I wish I could have gone back. I could have, should have, would have, right? But the issue for us is our education. And if a child is not educating or learning, they're going to fall behind the 8 ball.
You know, it's funny you bring up the issue of education, because I go up every Thursday. I teach up at the correctional facility. I actually teach Bible study every Thursday there, and we've engaged in some of these same kind of conversations with the brothers there. And almost to the inmate, there is a direct correlation, Frank, between that person ultimately ending up in a correctional facility and their failure in our educational system. Or another way to put it is the failure of our education system to effectively educate these young men. There are arguments on both sides of the aisle with regards to that. I mean, from I guess an educated perspective, you know, the thought is that a lot of these young men don't come to school with a mindset of learning, and but then on the other side of the aisle, there's the mindset that, you know, these educators are not relating to us. You know, we come here to learn, but they're not speaking our language. And I don't mean Ebonics, and I don't mean slang, but I mean, you know, in a way that makes that subject matter interesting to our particular male children. I mean, which do you think it is, or is it a little bit of both?
Well, I just believe, from my point of view, growing up, I'm a product. I grew up in Mississippi, was active in the civil rights movement, participated in marches and demonstrations. I just believe in community. I believe that if our young people are going to have any hope, it has to be the community working together to help reach our young people before they get to 3rd, 4th grade. Because one is a child who cannot read, right? They're going to have some challenges. And by middle school, we know the data shows that a child cannot read, is not literate, they're going to struggle in school and eventually have a life of challenge. So I believe that it really starts early, and it starts in family. We have to teach our girls to have a sense of pride, a sense of identity, a sense of virtue. We have to work with our young boys to help them know that they matter, that they have potential and promise, to work with them around building their skills early in life, that school matters, that they have to go to school not just to play sports, but to be the very best student that they can be so that they can have future. So we get our young people caught up in this culture where you have to play basketball. You're being groomed to play basketball, or you're being groomed to play football, or you have to be tough, right? So we have to look at our culture, because our culture has a bottleneck on our young people. Our kids want to be hip-hop stars and rappers and all of that. And not how many jobs are there for the millions of our young people as rappers? They're just, you know, it just doesn't work that way. But our kids can become a teacher or a doctor or a nurse or a business person. They can even become an entrepreneur. But we have to analyze our community in terms of the challenges that we're facing and provide the kinds of opportunities that you're doing here in Yonkers and the work that we're doing in White Plains. We got to engage our fathers to stay connected with their families.
You know, I want to come back to something you said, Frank. See, part of the problem with it, as you know, I'm a former professional basketball player, so I have mixed feelings with regard to that whole issue. But, you know, our children have a tendency to migrate toward that which they see the most, that which is around them the most, that which, I guess, gets the most glamour. And we don't see African-American male teachers in the public schools with any degree of numbers. You know, we don't see that. We don't see African American males in leadership roles in the educational system. You know, but you can turn on the television on any day of the week in any season of the year, and you can see a baseball field with African Americans all over it. You can see a football field with African Americans all over it. You can see any NBA or National Basketball franchise that's full of African American males. And so they see that as, you know, this is our way out. I think the failure is that we haven't done a good enough job of glamorizing the other professions, the teacher, if you will, the local law enforcement officer, if you will, a lawyer or a doctor, whatever the case may be. You know, those professions, we have not done a good enough job of talking up and introducing into the lives of our young people. When our young males go through a normal public school, whether even here in Yonkers or in White Plains, guidance counselors aren't pushing young people, you know, into the law profession or into the medical profession.
Right.
You understand what I'm,
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
And so part of the problem is that we're not doing a good enough job of promoting those other professions
Right.
and pushing our young people and letting them know that they can be. And the other thing is exposure too. Oftentimes the people who have become teachers or lawyers or doctors, you know, they could do a better job of coming back into our community and talking with and spending some time, you know, with our young people so that they understand that it can be attainable and that you too could do the same thing. You know,
Well, I agree, and that's why I said if we're going to get out of this quagmire, it has to be about community. And really, I believe that it first starts with us as an African-American community, but we also need the help of the faith community, of the business community, of others in our community to help sustain and support a healthy community, because what affects us is going to have impacts on the larger community. We need to have an educated community. I just believe that the education is the way to go. And you know, Malcolm X said that your education is your passport to the future. So the issue becomes, where are we putting our investments, right? I was mentioning about, you know, your budget is a picture of your priorities.
Sure.
Our city governments, our budgets are a picture of priorities. So if we're not investing in our kids, then we're going to have, again, some issues in terms of developing success in our young people. Mm-hmm. I just believe that children need to be in school. In fact, I believe in all-day schools. Mm-hmm. I believe that children need to be in schools even on Saturday. We run Saturday school programs in White Plains through the Youth Bureau. Mm-hmm. We're competing in a global community. And many of the countries in Asia and Africa are ahead of us because, one, their kids are spending their time learning and speaking dual languages, multi-languages, and we at the end of the school day in our community, you know, we go home and we go to the playground. Sure. When we need to be involved in science, technology, math, we need to be involved in performing arts and music and dance. We need to be involved even in school on Saturday to strengthen those deficits that we as a community face. So the issue becomes, how do we change where we are? And really, it does take a whole village. And I appreciate the work that you're doing here, but you alone cannot. It's like throwing a pebble in the ocean. You alone cannot do this. When we look at graduation rates, right? I was mentioning that in Rochester, the graduation rate of students in Rochester, New York, African American, is 9%. Well, that should be alarming, because if kids are not graduating from high school, what's going to happen to them in terms of their future? Absolutely. Right. Either you're going to be a help to our community, or you're going to be a challenge. And so then we repeat these same behaviors that we see in our community, which is issues of teen pregnancy, issues of single-parent home, issues of our young people getting caught up in the unhealthiness of our community. Sure. And so we have to raise a generation of young people, I believe, where we want them to succeed, which means longer school days, more enrichment activities, more math, science, and technology, more focus on family development. You know, we need to help our family we need to help our families even manage budgets. You know, our families really, you know, you get your check and you go out and buy a pair of sneakers, $150, $200 pair of sneakers, when our children need to have a computer at home, right? And now the issue of, you know, the e-books, right? You know, we're getting out of into the technology where e-books is going to be more of a prevalent part of our community.
Let's stay there for just a moment. I want to get into juvenile justice, but we're going to do that in the second half of our show, or actually the second series of our show with Commissioner Bill Carter of the Theodore E. Young Greenberg Center. So I'm going to hold back on the juvenile justice part. But let's talk more about the educational piece. You know, it's interesting. Several years ago, I was a college basketball coach, and I remember going down into the island of Dominica, and I was going to see a young man who was a very high-profile basketball program. And I remember renting a car and driving up to this facility, and I remember getting onto the property, onto the grounds of this school, and I didn't see any human beings. And I was beginning to think to myself, maybe I came at the wrong day, and I knew I, made arrangements to be there on that day, but I didn't see anybody anywhere around. It was total silence, nobody moving. The exterior of the building, there were no human beings moving around. So I went inside the building, and lo and behold, I didn't see anybody on the inside of the building. The halls was completely empty. I could not hear a sound in the building. This is a true story. So I said, I have to be here the wrong day. So I was there. I'm halfway, down the Caribbean islands. So I said, well, let me just walk down and see if I can find the office. So finally I walked down the hall, and I did find the office, and lo and behold, when I walked inside, there were people in there working. And so I said, I'm sorry, but did I come on a day when there were no school? They said, no, absolutely, there's school here. I said, well, where are the kids? Where are the students? They said, sir, the students are in class. Now, that shocked me. So the headmaster came out. He was an African-American gentleman, and we greeted one another, and he had originally been here in the States as a principal in the Archdiocese. And we began to, talk, and I said, I'm amazed because, there are no students in the hall. I don't see any bodies. I can't even hear any noise. He said, Jim, let me tell you the difference. He said, I've taught both in America and I teach here now, and I'm a principal here now.
Okay.
He said, let me tell you the difference. He said, in America, I spent 65% of my time in a classroom either getting the class to be quiet or providing some level of discipline, and 35% of the time I spent educating our students. Here,